It's just plain wrong that getting good sleep is so hard. Sleep doesn't have to be this hard.
There is a faster way to get better sleep. Sleep Takeout gives you real practical sleep solutions and your questions answered.
I'm Dr. Baughn, and I'm a licensed psychologist.
And I'm Dr. Zetoony, and I'm a board certified sleep and pulmonary physician.
And we're here to talk to you about sleep advice without a pill.
This Sleep Takeout podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only. And this podcast is not intended as professional or legal advice.
Podcasts are not treatment. Sleep disorders and mental health conditions need to be individualized with your healthcare provider. Sleep Takeout is not a replacement for professional advice or recommendations.
So help your friends sleep better. Share the Sleep Takeout podcast with them and be sure to rate and review this episode on your favorite podcast app.
All right. Welcome back, Michelle. It's great to see you.
How are you?
I'm good. Look at what we're doing here. We're starting 2025 out on and differently than how we've done it before.
We have committed to trying video as a choice. Now, guys, if you've been listening to us for a while, just be a little patient because this is new for us. And just like the original, maybe lost episodes or the early episodes when we started and didn't have good microphones and noise canceling and chat GPT, just remember, be patient because we will get better.
We will.
And,
We
if it's been 4 years, we're on our fifth season now. So if it's been 4 years, it means we're going to keep going.
That's true. We would have imploded at this point if we weren't at least enjoying it. So
Right. I guess people can see what we're drinking these days if we're on
yeah,
video.
they can see my coffee cup. Yep,
Yeah. Well, it
absolutely.
looked like a nice smoothie there.
Oh, I know. I got these. It's interesting. I got these hot cups. I think last Christmas, after Christmas at Starbucks because they were on sale. They were discounting all the and Starbucks actually when they have merchandise on sale, it's usually a fairly good deal. So
It's not as good as it is at Salvation Army.
right. No, it's not that cheap. But they usually
That is a great place to buy like Stanley cups and things like that.
oh yeah, I bet. Although I imagine those are hot commodities. Girl, that Stanley Cup, it's like a dumbbell. You can get muscles. My 9-year-old has one right now. And I'm like, you better
I'm
switch
not
arms.
into them because I keep dropping everything and spilling.
Yeah, well, they're indestructible. It's like a tank. Like
Yeah.
your water bottle has become a tank with and honestly it's kind of clunky, but whatever. Anyway.
I think it's just another one of these things. We all have to drink water. Let's just enjoy however we're gonna drink it.
That's true.
In
And if
whatever
it helps
vessel we're
you,
gonna do.
totally. And if it helps you drink more, by all means, drink more. So drink
Right.
more water.
So that's interesting. Yeah, the being 2025 it's just really interesting that we got through the shortest days of the year. We're kind of just settling into new ideas and new things. And I mean, the biggest hot topic I've been asked about is everybody got devices, for the holidays.
Oh yeah, everything is kind of becoming more and more connected, which is not bad, but I think a challenge at times for those of us that are already pretty wired. So,
Right. Well, this is gonna be kind of an interesting episode, I think, because we're gonna talk a little bit about wearables and we're gonna
mhm,
talk about what you can get from them, what you can maybe not get, but they promise that you can get from them. Yeah.
mhm,
And, where does it fit in if you want to try and improve your sleep health?
mhm. Great questions, and I think too, the and as with technology, these things kind of change so quickly. So there's two big ones. There's more than that, but there's two real big ones that I would say I see the most commonly for sleep. Um, and this is either the Apple Watch, and giving, what is my Apple Watch telling me about my sleep? Or the other one is the Aura Ring. And both of those kind of give some interesting kind of sleep data. Um,
It's very interesting because neither one was actually approved as a device for measuring like breathing, breathing types and thing, but the Garmin did. The Garmin got an
mhm,
FDA approval preliminary medical device category.
mhm. Exciting, which means that these are ones we need to kind of follow up more on too. Um,
Yeah. And
and
for each thing that there is the Oura Ring, the Apple Watch, the Garmin, there are the knockoff versions of them that are
mhm,
available very widely.
mhm.
So what are they meant to do? What are these things meant to do? They initially were meant to track activity and fitness,
Mhm.
not specifically sleep. So that's a really important thing to just identify frontline.
Right.
Is sleep is another thing that is monitored because for the time that you're not moving, there is a relative quiescence or a quiet period. And so it's the leftover from what it was meant to measure in the first place. But
Mhm.
people are interested in sleep. I mean, if you're listening to this
Mhm.
podcast, you're interested in sleep, improving your sleep, maybe optimizing your sleep, um, maybe fixing, your sleep, and so
Mhm.
trying to get some more
Mhm.
information. And so, Dan, when they come talk to you about their wearables, what are they talking about? Talking about the good parts of it or the bad parts of it?
Well, so I think this is an interesting kind of piece that I have two answers for you. One's the scientific one, and then one's kind of more the behavioral one.
I want to know
Um,
the more realistic, whatever that means.
I mean, I would say the more realistic one is that the accuracy of any of these devices is not as accurate as they lead you to believe. And so I think that's the realistic, like, reality.
So when you say accuracy, you're talking about accuracy in terms of like the quality of the sleep, or are they sleeping at all?
Well, so I think that's the what you just said is a big one where I have a lot of times what pops up for my clients. They're like, my watch said I was asleep, but I knew I was staring at the ceiling and I wasn't getting any sleep. Or my watch said, I got a REM, but I know I didn't have anything last night. And this is the part where I wish there was more of a disclaimer on these devices to say that what we're really doing is kind of imputing what we think your brain sleep staging is at, because the honest answer is nobody knows what stage your brain is at unless we can actually look at brainwave activity. And your Apple Watch isn't strapped to your forehead. Um, although that might be an interesting adaptation or something, but, um, and neither is the Aura Ring. But what they do is they look at other kind of like biological types of, activity and see what can be, more correlated and what can be used as an algorithm to kind of predict what stages of sleep that you're in. And so again, this is where I would say it can be interesting data to be aware of, but is it actually going to change your sleep, and get you better sleep? Usually the answer is no, because it's not tracking the specific things that we want to know. And especially if you're already having difficulties with sleep as well. So some of the key things we really want to know, we want to know what time you got into bed, what time you actually fell asleep to your best abilities. Your best guess on that's completely fine. We want to know how many times you woke up in the night. Your best guess is fine. We want to know how long those awakenings were for. And then we want to know when you got up and out of bed. Well, we want to know when you got up, and then we want to know when you got out of bed, because each one of those data points, which your watch doesn't track and neither does the ring, um, uh, it doesn't track it to a certain extent. It can detect movement changes, but it's not necessarily going to say you fell asleep within 15 minutes or it took me 3 hours to fall asleep. Um, so that's where I would say the part, back to what you were saying earlier, like the part that what I like to reinforce is that I would say, hey, I can tell you're interested in your health and you're curious about the things that your watch is telling you or your ring is telling you about your sleep. Let's talk more about that. That's the part that I like. But then we also have to have the more realistic answer, which is, you know, your Apple Watch is likely not really estimating REM sleep correctly anyway. And even if it was, um, there's not something that we can do that says, okay, let's magically get you more REM sleep. And this is another one that I see too. A lot of times I have clients come in, they say, my watch or my ring is telling me I'm not getting enough deep sleep. Like, oh my God, I'm going to die because I'm not getting enough like deep sleep. And again, this is one where I would say, great job for being interested, but there's other data points that are more relevant to how to help you get more restful, restorative sleep. I don't, what are your thoughts, Michelle?
Yeah, so I find it really interesting that you went there, and I love that. On my side, again, we talk about you being the yin and the yang to this. Is
Mhm.
I'm always worried about what's going to kill you, or like what's going to land you up in a hospital. So I'm
Mhm.
looking not even on the sleep parameters. They want to show me on the sleep parameters and their charts. I'm looking for the oxygen levels if your
Mhm.
device has that parameter, and a surrogate marker that might be the heart rate.
Mhm.
So what and again, this is not new for anybody who went through elementary school biology, is when you're sleeping, you're generally slower. Your body, your brain, your body is slower than when you're awake, and definitely slower than when you're exercising. So there's no reason that during your time of active sleep that your heart rate should be real high. Okay, so you wanted to see that delineation between your daytime and your nighttime. The heart rate should be much lower. And that's called the heart rate variability. And there's a lot that you can look into that, even with heart rate variability during exercise. But basically, you want your heart rate to be lower at night or during your sleep period, even if that's not night, than it is during the day. You should not have periods where your heart rate's going, definitely not over 100 while you're sleeping.
Mhm.
And you also don't want your heart rate to be super low during the day. That generally means you're not active enough during, which if you've listened to the podcast on, exercise, you want your heart rate variability to be very high during the day compared to your heart rate variability being low, at night.
Mhm.
Okay. And the difference between being that variable, so that's one thing. And if it tells you your oxygen in your whole life, your oxygen should not drop under 90%. And
Mhm.
so if you're saying, oh, well, it's only for, 2 minutes or 3 minutes where your oxygen's dropping into the 80s or lower, that is a big red flag on the medical side.
Mhm.
So that's one thing. And then the other thing that I was going to say about some of these parameters is it is based on movement. These all started as GPS type of trackers. So if you're doing a lot of movement during the night, the algorithm for light sleep and deep sleep is based on your movement. And so if you are moving, you're paralyzed during REM. So it will pop up that you don't have REM. So even if you are having pain, it will report a much less REM sleep than normal. And and the typical amount of REM sleep for a person is about 20% of the night. So it is going to be smaller. And the typical amount of slow wave sleep for someone over 50 could be none. And that's a completely normal level. And yet somebody in their maybe 70s or 80s is looking and saying, it doesn't tell me I have more than a few minutes of deep sleep. Well, technically that is a normal parameter, but I'm not sure it's normal for what we say is normal. For the reasons you said, we're not recording your brain waves. We don't know how many slow waves you're having in your brain.
Mhm.
Um, but from a standpoint of just like food tracking, is if you can have a device that actually records it so you don't have to write it down or pay attention, that might be helpful initially. But part of improving your sleep is recognizing some of those things that are standing in your way to good sleep. So if you have a watch that you're wearing at night or any sort of wearable device, you really want those notifications off. And I think we have on our schedule in a few weeks to even record another episode
Mhm.
of, you know, how to get our devices to turn our notifications off. And
All
I
right.
think we should
Yeah.
really, with the video too, you can teach people how to do it a
Mhm.
little bit better than on the audio. So
Absolutely.
the most important thing that I can tell you, other than waking up at the consistent time in the morning, is how active that you are during the day. You want to use your fitness trackers not just to record your sleep. It's actually more important that you are very physical during the day, and that an activity tracker is kind of that unintended benefit for sleep, is to show you if you're not active.
Mhm.
And that's the biggest thing I think mine told me probably in the last year is you have to do a lot more, activity during the day if
Oh,
you
yeah.
want to earn the same amount of calories that you want to eat during the day, or if you want to sleep better at night. If you're
Oh,
not
yeah.
active enough, then you won't.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say in general, a lot of people that are dealing with sleep, difficulties specific to insomnia, tend to be underactive and actually do need to, and you need to actually get out there and burn some more energy. It doesn't have to necessarily be a workout, but I will say exercise is great at this. Um, but you tend to actually be under the average level of activity for other people. So yeah, get out there, do more things. So Go live your
So,
best life.
do you have a fitness tracker yourself, Dan?
I do not. So I have kind of been holding out on this, and I continue to hold out on it, primarily because I don't want more alerts on things in my life. Although I feel like what actually will tip me over the edge on this is that my kid keeps asking for one, and I feel like if my kid is going to have one, then I need to know exactly how they work, um, and the ins and the outs. So I think that will actually likely be what tips me over, just because essentially, you can use it like a mini cell phone for a kiddo. So, and have their contacts and who they can chat with, who they can do things, those types of things. So, but I
Yes.
don't know, I'm holding out on that. So,
I would tell you for your kid, try one of the knockoff brands first.
oh, I've seen these. These are on Amazon. Yeah.
They only last about a year in terms of they won't charge after that, but they work really well. So, um, as we may have talked about, I'm a big mover and shaker on most of these trackers. Started with the original Fitbits when there wasn't even a screen on them. I do have more Apple products than I do Garmin products. I do have both type of devices. The
Hmm.
Garmin product that I have does not have a screen on it. I mean, at least not a screen. It looks like an Apple Watch or a
Hmm.
nice watch. It does record the steps and it does record heart rate and oxygen level. But
Hmm.
it actually uses a watch battery, which I think is a huge benefit compared to the other bigger products like the Apple, like the Garmin types of ones that you have to charge on a regular basis.
Hmm.
Um, but there's so many different things. And I think if you are going to be jumping into the fitness tracker, is look at it as a fitness tracker, not just a sleep tracker.
Right.
Because you are a human who's meant to move and you're meant to move enough that you're meant to sleep better. So
Hmm.
that would be kind of my big proponent of it. Interestingly, when I had these trackers on the kids, they were going 26 and 30,000 steps a day when they were under 10, not even trying.
Hmm.
And I couldn't get myself to 5,000 on a work day intentionally trying
Oh,
to move
wow.
this. So I think that's a huge benefit. But if you have a child who's maybe more an indoors type of kid or is a reader, is not moving enough, it could be a real good incentive.
Hmm. Oh, totally. I mean, I think this is why the trackers I've been following more so have been like the Whoop straps, have been the ones that are intentionally screenless. So just because I'm like, I don't want to. But then I think we talked about this too. I'm a big Peloton person, and I'm like, oh, if it integrates into Peloton, then I'm sold. But I
Yeah.
mean, the Apple
I
Watch.
think the ship has probably sailed on the screenless ones unless you're just gonna maybe have some sort of pedometer,
Hmm.
because you do need a screen in order to be able to make some modifications.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, that would
Yeah.
be mine on it. So
Okay.
I vote for start cheap, work up.
Yes. Start where your budget's at, and then and kind of go up and see what's. So I mean, but the coming back to when a client or a patient kind of comes in and they're saying, "Hey, I've got this data on my watch or my ring." And I get this a lot when people are like, "Oh yeah, yeah." I mean, when I talk about doing a sleep diary and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I can just get it off of my watch and my ring." And then I'm like, "Well, we can get some of the data off of that, but other data I actually need you to pay attention to in the morning when you wake up." Um,
But amongst each individual, it could be really helpful to make
mhm,
changes. So let's say you've given a person some homework to do to become more active or have some type of practice where they turn their technology off
mhm,
at a certain time. It could be really helpful to see how you're doing one week to the next week. So just monitoring your own personal statistics.
mhm. Absolutely.
I
Yep.
find the motivation with other people as well, specifically on the fitness tracking, because you can have other people that are in your Fitbit community or your Apple community, and then you can see how they're doing compared to you.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
but
I would
if
say
it
this
if it's
is
something that you're paying attention to and becoming anxious about it, it's not the right thing for you.
correct. But I think this is where it's helpful to acknowledge that it's how people interpret what they perceive the data to be telling them is part of the challenge. And And I'll be honest, a lot of the data that any of a wearable is going to tell you about your sleep, I think you have to really acknowledge that it's not actually the most accurate, if that makes sense. Like, that's the part where I'd kind of tell you, you can pay attention to like what you were mentioning earlier, like heart rate, like, oxygen saturation levels. Those are good metrics that I think you
Or
can
maybe
take.
just how much time you're in bed.
Right. Totally. That's a good one. And if your goal is to, and this sounds a little counterintuitive for
Mm.
some of our listeners out there, the goal is actually less time in bed. Um, so not more.
Yeah, and for people like I know for myself, it's making sure that there's more time that's spent in bed
hmm Yeah.
and more time for downtime.
Yeah.
So every bit of technology, and again, I don't think people that listen to us will be surprised, is it's a tool. So you are capable of sleeping, you are actually capable of optimizing your sleep, and you can use your tools to get you to a better spot. But if you're the wrong tool for you, or using the tool in a way that is counterproductive to accomplishing your task, then you may need a little bit of advice how to get there.
Sure. Absolutely. And
So
we're going to do a follow-up episode on this one to talk about notifications we should probably do an episode on notifications for Android devices and then notifications for iOS devices. Like there's different settings on each of them. So,
right.
and ways to kind of mute them. And I feel like, yeah, it's gotten complicated. So,
It has, but there's
mm,
also YouTube, and we thank YouTube for being on their platform now and trying to do
yeah,
video.
we're
And
giving it a shot. 2025. Right.
yeah, no, it's exciting. So you guys can critique our hairstyles. You can critique our
Our wardrobe. Ooh,
our wardrobe. Oh yeah, we'll have to pay attention to our wardrobe.
we might. Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Our background,
Anyway,
everything.
well, happy
We'll all do it.
2025. Get your list together of all the fun things that you want to accomplish for this year. And it's going to be a good year.
It will, absolutely. Well, and don't forget, help your friends to sleep better. You can share the Sleep Takeout podcast with them and be sure to again rate and review this episode on your favorite podcast app. And
Remember, sleep patient, sleep well,
dream big.
and wake up refreshed.
Bye.
Bye.